I'm in Mystic, Connecticut. It's a seaport town on the Atlantic coast that still holds some of the charm of the 1800s seaports. Francis Child grew up in the Boston seaport. His dad was a sailmaker in Boston, and young Frank probably heard dialects from all over the world of people that came in to Boston to bring in their trade goods. And I think some of this love of language probably started there, because when I was digging through the Harvard records, I found letters to him in German and in French and in Dutch and in other languages. And when I got to the rejected section of ballads, he had in his own handwriting ballads that he had written now in Spanish and in Portuguese and in Dutch, German, French. He had ballads written in Latin, in modern Greek, Romanian, and even in some of the medieval languages that have kind of gone extinct now. He must have been an amazing linguist, but I think it probably started with his early childhood, hearing all of these dialects and languages coming into the Boston seaport when he was a kid. Down, get down, loving her, she cried. Stay all night with me. I have these chains and the finest I have. Apply them all to thee. I'm gonna do that again. Away you go, so they spend the night on the road. Going to me, my God, said the child as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. Going to me, my God, said the child as he stood. Away you go by land, said the night on the road. Away you go by land, said the night as he stood. And he stood, and he stood, and it's well that he stood. In my hand, said the child as he stood. In the book, The New Penguin Book of English Folk Songs by Steve Root and Julia Bishop, I'll let you get a shot of the cover right there. There is a very interesting discussion on modes and how they apply to English folk songs. The interesting thing about this book is it pretty much focuses on the English aspect of folk songs, including some of the child ballads, rather than the Scottish aspect, which a lot of the other writers tend to focus on. In this one, there's a discussion of the Christmas carol, the First Noel, and what would happen if you changed it into different modes. So the first mode that we play in is the Ionian mode, or the major scale, and this is in the key of D major, which means that it has an F sharp and a C sharp in it. So here's the Ionian mode, or the major scale that most of us are familiar with, and it will change through each successive mode that we go to. Here's the First Noel. So even though I'm in the key of D, I've gone back to that F sharp as my tonal ending. Now we go on and we're going to change this into the Mixolydian mode, and to make it Mixolydian, what we're going to do is we're going to take this C sharp and we're going to lower it down a half step to a C note. So it goes like this. Now that sounds probably wrong to your ear if you've heard that before, or maybe it might sound a little bluesy, because when you play that Mixolydian mode and you add that flat 7, it's something very common in blues music. But now we go on to the Dorian mode, and it's going to sound like this. And what we do to make it Dorian is we take that F sharp and we lower it down a half step, and the C sharp is lowered down a half step too. So now we have both of the sharps that make up the D major scale are gone, and now what we have is a scale that sounds maybe a little more minor-y. So we get this. So that's changing it again. Now we can go another one, and we can go into the Aeolian, which is another type of minor-y scale, and what happens with that is both the F sharp and the C sharp are lowered, but we also take the B and we lower it down to a B flat. So we end up with a First Noel that sounds like this. Again, very dark sounding kind of a mode. In the 1930s and 40s, Penn State professor Samuel Bayard came up with a theory of what he called musical families, or tune families. And what he found were some tunes that seemed to be different, perhaps two different songs, actually might be related modally to each other. And he was studying mainly fiddle tunings in southern Pennsylvania and the northern part of West Virginia. But a lot of these tunes had their correlation in relation with the child ballads. And so some of the tunes that he discovered or that he saw were closely related between Anglo music might be related in Irish music, in Scottish music, and English music, and they just have slight variations from one country to the next as to how those tunes play out in different versions of sometimes the same song, or sometimes different versions of other songs where that tune was adapted to fit that song. What was really interesting is that a lot of the tunes that, or a lot of the songs that Child discovered, though there were 305 of them, Bayard pretty much asserted that they pretty much boiled down to about 40 different popular tunes that were tweaked and mutated and changed to fit all of the songs that were in there. And certain things that changed the tune could be the mode. Maybe just raising or lowering one or two notes could be enough to change a tune significantly. It could also be, as Bronson pointed out, that the lyrics changed the structure of the beat, and so it might go from saying in a 5-time, like 1 2 or 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, to say 4-4-time, 1 2 3 4, or to 3-6-time, or 3-8 or 6-8, or any of these alternate timings. Could be enough based on the lyrics to change how the tune actually comes across. So the same tune might be used for several different songs, but to the layman, you might not notice that that's actually the same tune that's being used. A good example of this in a non-Child ballad would be the use of the hymn How Firm a Foundation as a tune for the song Poor Ellen Smith. The tune, or the song How Firm a Foundation, when sung as a hymn, typically doesn't have the same sound exactly as the tune Poor Ellen Smith. And the first time I heard it, being familiar with How Firm a Foundation, I had to have somebody point out to me that that was actually the same song or the same tune melody, and but it had changed just enough to where I didn't recognize it. The other thing Bayard discovered that I found particularly interesting was that a lot of the songs where they feel like they should date back to the Middle Ages, because we hear about knights and we hear about elves and we hear about all these things that we associate with Middle Age romance, actually most of these tunes only date back to the early 1700s and the late 1600s. So where did they come from? Well, some of them came from old hymns or church music that was popular. Some of them came from the Fitzwilliam Virginal book, which I actually have a copy of, which you should get if you really are interested in studying this. The songs could have also came from popular tunes of the time, other songs that people wrote. They could have come from operas. They really kind of picked these tunes up from anywhere and they modified them and made them work. Why they actually worked for, or why they actually were modal after a lot of the music that they were borrowing from was what would be considered art music or non-modal music, is kind of a mystery. And my theory is that some of the instruments that the people had would have been maybe tuned modally. Like if someone played a stringed instrument, a lot of the old fiddle tunings tended to be kind of modal. Some of the instruments that people played on, like the Irish tin whistle, or the English called it a flageolet, these little whistles tended to be modal because when you played in cross tunings you ended up with modal sounds. And some of the other instruments, the lute and things that people may have had at the time, it was easier to tune them in a way that was modal rather than to tune them in the more complicated way that classical musicians of the times would have played them. get down, love Henry, she cried. Stay all night with me. Have these gold chains and the finest I have, I'll apply them all to thee. I can't get down and I shan't get down. Stay all night with thee. Far better than these. We're at Sedgwick Pie in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and we're looking for the grave of Francis J. Child, which, if I am right, should be in that direction somewhere. So we're going to head over there and see if we can find him. I'm going to do that again. Get down, love Henry, she cried. Stay all night with me. Have these gold chains and the finest I have, I'll apply them all to thee. Down and I shan't get down. Stay all night with thee. Pretty little girl in butterfly, I love far better than thee. What doth the Lord require of thee but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God? Francis James Child, born in Boston, 1st of February 1825, died on the 11th of September 1896, editor of the English and Scottish Ballads. And his wife, Elizabeth Ellery Sedgwick, the wife of Francis James Child, she was born January the 7th of 1824, died September the 6th of 1909. All the paths of the Lord are mercy and truth unto such as keep his covenant and his testimonies. And his son is over here. This is Francis Sedgwick Child. He was born in 1869. He died March 2nd, 1935. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved. And I think this was his daughter, Susan Child Scogan. Can't see when she was born, but she died December 19th of 1946. gold in their hair, travel forth to Carter Hall, for young Tamlin is there. None that go by Carter Hall, but they leave him a pledge. Either the mantles are green, or else they're maidenhead. Jenna tied her kirtle green a bit above her knee. Then she's gone to Carter Hall, as fast as go can she. She done pulled a double rose but only two. When up jumped young Tamlin, said, "Lady, pull no more." Why come you to Carter Hall without command from me? Come and go, young Janet said, and I ask no leave of thee. Janet tied her kirtle green a bit above her knee, and she's gone to her father as fast as go can she.